Hi, my name is Sohail. I'm the founder of Soul and the host of the Oops, I Said God podcast. Today, I am with a dear friend named Leiko Coyle. She's a horse listener. She essentially knows the magic and understanding of working with horses in order for us to discover divinity. Isn't that so profoundly beautiful? The host of insights, spiritual and psychological, are profound, and she shared it with me multiple times. I knew I had to share it with you. Leiko, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Hale, it's so great to be with you.
And I hope the introduction did justice. You want to add
That was
anything to that?
beautiful. No, that was
That you
perfect
worked with
start.
amazing horse listeners, I would say, in Jordan and Sweden. I guess we'll get into all of that and what
Yes.
you've learned.
Yeah.
I guess I would love for you to share, what do you exactly do with horses?
So I would say that in the most broad sense, what I do is I spend time with horses in a way that allows them to share with us humans the wisdom, the insights, the ancient magic that they hold,
Mm,
which often is overlooked because most people with horses were all about riding or what we can do with them or what
yeah,
they can do for us
yeah.
physically, not so much what they can do for us from like a spiritual perspective, healing perspective.
So essentially, the horse becomes a mirror to understanding our own selves more deeply.
That's a beautiful way of saying it. In many ways, that is true. They are extraordinary reflectors. Just from a physiological standpoint, they can look at you and they can read your heart rate
Yeah.
and they
Wow.
can read your emotional state. So the thing that I always tell people about the horses is the only thing that they ask for is authenticity.
Yes, that's true.
So if you come into a pasture or someplace, a barn with horses, and you are really inside in turmoil or you have a lot of anger and you go in and you're like, I'm fine. This is great. The horse will be like, no,
Mm,
that doesn't, they can see the true
makes
beyond the
sense.
mask.
Yeah.
And for them, just from a biological, like evolutionary standpoint, it's not safe for them to have someone in their environment, in their herd, not be coherent inside and outside.
Oh, wow.
Because if you think about a herd of horses in the wild, that herd every member of that herd has a role. And I study with a woman in Sweden who I've told you a lot about, named Emily Kadge. And Emily has a herd of 60 some odd horses who live as wild as they pretty much can. There's fences, but they're very large areas that they
Mhm.
live in. And she is able to let the horses decide where they graze and who they live with. And so the thing about these horses is because we have domesticated horses and we've used them from the beginning of time for our own gain, we don't really get the chance to learn from them what they would do and how they live in their natural environment. And among like traditional horsemanship, people look at horses and they generally define 5 roles in a herd. There's like the leader, it's all hierarchical. So there's the leader and then it goes down from there.
Okay.
She has actually identified, I think at least a dozen roles, everything from the healer to the
Wow.
teacher, the scout, the defender, the attacker. Those are just some of them. And there's these classifications of these sort of roles. And what we start to learn is that within the herd, they will, for example, an attacker horse would be in captivity, would be probably considered a real danger. But in the wild, their role would be to chase after the wolf or the lion that was coming to attack the herd.
Mm,
So they are ready to give their life for the herd. A quite noble and powerful
yeah.
role. But we would look at that and say, wow, we can't control this horse.
Yeah.
This horse
Yeah.
isn't safe. So we're denying their kind of natural ability and what they might teach us about that position in in the herd. To to bring it back to what we were saying about why they want us to be authentic. It's essentially because they want everybody in the herd to be able to be connected in a way where they could move simultaneously. So if a predator comes, they would instantaneously they send the one who sees the predator would send a signal through its nervous system to the rest of the herd and almost like a school of fish. You see them, they turn,
Yeah.
they would just go. If there's one horse that is supposed to run, but they're really mad inside and they've been hiding it, and so they're distracted, that's not safe for the herd.
Wow.
Just like the horses with us, they want us to be congruent. They want what we feel authentically to be what we are and what we express in that moment. Also, they understand that emotions come and go. So they are okay with you expressing anger if you have anger, but because they know that it's temporary.
And so then what has been, especially in your experience in Sweden or elsewhere, and on your own, what have been some of the realizations of how horses have deepened your own spirituality or the spirituality of others?
Oh, I joke to my friends that if I don't know if like I think it's the Buddhist term ego annihilation.
Yeah.
If you want to have your ego annihilated, just get a horse because, and I say this with so much love and honoring, because for me, so horses, I was obsessed with horses from a young age. My best friend, when I was very little, had horses, and we would just get on her pony bareback. I just hold on. There was no skill.
Yeah.
I went to horseback riding camps and I wanted a horse, but my family couldn't afford a horse and we lived in the city at that point. And then as I got older, life happened. And it's interesting when I look back now, I can clearly see that the separation from horses when I became a teenager and thereafter coincided with a lot of the separation of myself from myself. Physically, emotionally, a lot of trauma, a lot of painful things happened. And it coincided with my movement away from horses. Now, not intentionally, but I just can notice that.
Yeah.
And what happened as I got older is I would have this weird thing where every time I would see a horse, I would burst into tears.
Really?
I actually had an experience in the city a few years ago,
New
some
York
years ago
City, by
now,
the way.
New York City, sorry, New York City, where I was standing on the corner of Madison in the 50s and and I was waiting across the street and I heard sirens. Like there was a bunch of fire trucks and police trucks and they were coming down the street and there just happened to be a mounted policeman there. And so he quickly rode into the middle of the intersection on his horse so that he could block traffic so the trucks could go by. And I just started bawling because I thought to myself, this horse who can hear a bird land in a tree, whose nervous system is so geared towards flight, to have to override that and go into where the sounds into this
Yeah.
intersection
It's
where
the middle
everything
of
is
it.
overwhelming. It
Huh.
devastated me.
Oh.
And I think there was something about that and about the times that I would see horses and I would just start crying. It was like a remembering a part of myself that maybe had also I had overridden, right? A sensitivity
Mm,
in order to do what needed to be done or get
yeah.
through certain things. So I started to see horses as this kind of reflection or mirror, to use your word, of sensitivity and attunement that so many of us have to override or shut down as we go through life.
So how did you move back towards horses?
So this was around the time of the pandemic. My husband and I moved more full-time to our place in the Berkshires, and I just decided to start taking horseback riding lessons. I figured that was something I could do.
That's also what I did too.
Yeah,
I
okay,
also
yeah. So a
started
lot of people
learning how
get
to
back,
ride.
yeah, get back into horses. But what I found is that the riding, it was nice, but what I really wanted was just to be with the horses.
Yeah.
And I was a little embarrassed, quite frankly. People go and you spend money and you ride and you do all the things and you try to look a certain way and it's all very exciting. But I really just wanted to be with the horses. And as I started doing this, I realized I was such a beginner again. I was actually really afraid of horses at that point.
Oh,
My whole body would shake when I got near them.
oh my God.
And I didn't understand it. Nothing had ever happened. I had never been thrown but I understood there was something there because I was having such a strong reaction, right? So I had to see what that was. So I kept going back and back and I was really aware of how uncomfortable it was, how much fear came forward. It was almost like being with horses brought forward all of this dormant fear and, yeah, just discomfort that I hadn't really processed. And even though a lot of it was very painful and uncomfortable, I knew that if I kept going at some point, I would get to the other side of it. And along the way, I was meeting these horses who were so willing to be with me, however I was that day. And that really is a powerful thing about horses. They have no judgment and they're willing. When you think about it, horses have pretty much been enslaved, right? We've taken them and used them for war,
Yeah.
for building our societies, for just labor. And even the performance side of horse racing, I'm pretty extreme now in my views about not wanting animals to have to perform for human ego.
Yeah, sure.
But so they have every reason to hate humans. And yet they still are willing to be with us and to hold the opening for the possibility that we might remember
Mm,
what we've forgotten, which is that, first of all, that we're all one we're
yeah,
different species, but we're all
yeah,
one essentially.
yeah.
And we have lost so much of, I feel, our sense of belonging to the world. And I believe that horses really help can help humans remember that we belong and that there's just in the same way that we use horses for racing or labor. I had this idea once, that your body is your horse. So the way we even some of us treat our bodies, right? We like
Yeah,
force ourselves to get up in the morning or maybe
yeah.
we push ourselves, whatever. But the horses, I think, can remind us of a different way of being, a way that's much more about attunement, about listening, about allowing our sensitivity to be present, not having to always hide it or
Yeah. Can you
amp it
share
down.
some of your experience? 'Cause I can imagine very abstractly that makes so much sense.
Mhm.
But then I don't really feel it
Yeah.
as much.
Yeah.
Like I really like, what
Yeah.
do you really mean? Like I know, yeah, what do you how do we really see our own spirituality through horses?
So there's different levels, I would say. Some of the people that I see are maybe not super open spiritually. Maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable talking about ancestors or spirit guides, where
Yeah.
you and I are very comfortable talking about these things. So for those people, I would say horses teach us a lot about energy. When you're with so from a nervous system perspective, just to go back to that for a minute,
Yeah.
their hearts are 5 to 10 times larger than ours. But they beat slower.
Interesting.
And so they just by being in their presence, our nervous systems can start to settle. They so for somebody who just from an energetic perspective or nervous system perspective might start to experience coming back into their body, maybe breathing a little bit. This big animal tends to, in most people, inspire some degree of vulnerability. Because even if you're somebody who likes horses, you don't know what they're going to do. They're big and they're unpredictable in
Mhm.
certain ways, how they move, right? Or if they get spooked, they might do a big movement. So I think a lot of people automatically feel a certain level of vulnerability. And then the horse can start to reflect certain things. And this is where I come in, where I guide people to allow the horse to be a mirror that might show them something about their energy, what they're holding in their body, maybe limiting beliefs that they have, maybe fears or emotions that they're suppressing. So there's that level.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so to get to the spiritual level, which is my own personal experience
Yeah.
and with those people that are open to it, the horses, I believe, really they stand between worlds. So they have the ability to be present in this moment, but they have, and I'm sure this is true of many animals, but horses have a particular way of doing this where they can straddle realms. And I think part of that, I should say that's a lot of just my experience. So I ended up getting a horse. Finally, after all of these years, I got a horse and she is this beautiful white, she's a Lipizzaner. So her lineage goes back the she's from Vienna, but it goes back to I think the 1700s, and her
Wow.
ancestors were war horses for the Spanish royal people
Yeah.
and the European royals. She's ancestrally, she has this very intense her breed is has a certain physicality and a certain kind of dignity that
Mm.
you would want if you were,
A royal.
oh, yes, a royal, or you also had to go into war.
Yeah.
And so she's a very intense horse in that way. I didn't really know what I was doing at this point, and what I had to learn from her, and I still am learning from her, is trust, which sounds trite, but trust, as we know, is actually the foundation
Yeah,
of all spiritual
for sure.
practice, life
Trust.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust meaning, how do I become so present in the moment and truly trust that what is there in that moment is exactly what is needed, even when I have fear, even when there's all sorts of
Yeah.
factors. That trust is like I think like step one. And that opens up all these other doors.
So I guess then the question is, how are you a horse listener? And how do you help people specifically on knowing themselves through that process?
So listen, and the reason why I said horse listener, because what I practice is really listening. And we're talking about horses, but really it's with everything. You
Yeah.
can be a wind listener, you can be a plant listener,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can be a human listener. To listen is really an act of devotion, right?
Mm,
To God.
mm,
And
that's
to
beautiful.
being present with what is in that moment. So for me to listen is to try to clear out all of the noise and my expectations and my judgments, and to just sink into the moment,
Yeah.
the present moment, and let it be, and then see what comes.
And then what comes for that particular person who's doing a session? So
Yeah.
something will come to them, I assume, or to
Sometimes,
you,
yeah, both. I
bring
see
it up.
myself as like as a translator sometimes of
Yeah.
what the horse is showing me, but often the person, the horse, it's almost like a dynamic system, right? Where the horse, the person, and me, or the horses, that as soon as there's an opening, which is my job to create, that's really what I do, is try to create the opening. Then it's anything can happen. And in the training I did, which was this amazing herd of horses in Canada, their motto was, "You can't make this shit up." So I'll just give you a funny story, because this was when I was first doing my training, and my horse was living in a herd of horses. There was about, I think, 16 or 17 horses, and they all lived quite rustically outside all the time, which is ideal, but not always so easy when you're trying to get a horse and do something with it. And I had to do a lot of practice sessions. So I had a practice client coming that day. And what I would do ahead of my clients is I would go out to the herd, and I would walk the perimeter of this huge barn, all the fences, and I would do what sort of is natural to me to invoke my allies in spirit, my
Yeah.
ancestors.
Yep.
I would really visualize and call in a container for the space, for all the horses,
Wow.
for everything in that space, the land, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no separation. And then I would go out to the horses and I would tell them, like, I'm sure people thought I would, if they were passing by, they think I was nuts. I'm out there
Yeah.
basically saying, so I have this client coming.
And you're saying this to the
I'm saying
horses.
this to the horses, and I'm very comfortable talking to horses now. And I would ask for a horse, in this case, one horse, to partner with me, but I didn't know who it was going to be. So earlier that morning, I did my daily meditation. And in my meditation, I had an image of one of the horses in the herd. I didn't know her very well. But anyway, I just saw that and let it go.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I said to the horses, I have this client coming in a half an hour. It was raining. It was a miserable day. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to go out? And I have to catch one of the horses, bring it inside to the barn. I don't know how this is going to happen. But I remembered this one horse and I went over, I yelled to her and I said, if it's you, I'm going to come out. Please let me catch you. Because you can't always, not always so easy to get a horse.
Yeah, especially.
And then I turned and under my breath, I just said, or you could just come in at the time. So I go in, I set up for the client, and she comes in, we sit down, and
The client comes
the
in.
client comes in.
Yeah.
And I say to her, we do some preliminary things. We sometimes will say, and it set an intention. I like to use cards. So we pulled some cards, like divination cards.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so now I'm going to go out and I'm going to bring in a horse. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how this is going to go because sometimes you go out there to get a horse and they all run away.
Yeah.
Trust. So I experience it like I have to step over a threshold into trust, which is my primary practice, or I would say the base practice I do with the horses. And I turn to walk to where the pasture is, and the horse that I saw in my meditation has walked in and is standing by the sort of, there's an inside area with the fence, standing there looking at me. And at first I think I'm hallucinating.
Yeah.
And I think, no, she's just come in to get water. This can't be. But she's standing there. So I think, oh God, I have to go get her harness, her halter.
Yeah.
So I fumble around, I get it. And I think to myself, as soon as she sees me coming towards her with the halter, she's going to go out because she's not going to want to. She stands there. I open the gate. I put on the halter and we go in and do
Oh
the
my
session.
God.
And it was such a beautiful session.
What happened? Not divulging exactly,
Yeah.
obviously, the personal information. But what happens? Does the
She,
client just sit there? Do they? Yeah.
in this case, the client, we actually did. So sometimes I, there's a variety of things that we do. We did something a bit more active where we, without going into too much detail, we create sort of these stations that represent different things for the person.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
she took the horse and she moved through each station, and the horse reflected to her what she needed to know about that particular
Oh, wow.
thing. So let's say, I'm just making this up, but let's say one of them was relationships or was emotional boundaries or whatever. And
Could be a specific person too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's what I
totally.
thought. Yeah.
So the horse would do different things at different spots. And this particular client it was quite easy for her to know what was being communicated, but then I could also share some things that I observed. So there's things like that. There's another practice that I love that I made up called constellations, where if this is with a sort of a group of horses or more than one horse, and the person and the client, we can just sit there, and
I think I know
whatever
where
is
you're going with
coming
this.
up for the person,
Yeah.
they can assign the different qualities to the
different
horses.
people, yeah.
And so it could be people in
Yeah.
family constellation
That's
work.
what I did it. I tried it a couple month ago or something like that.
How was
And
it?
it was a mind-boggling experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Because basically we had all these strangers in the room.
yeah.
And they get assigned the role. And this was my very first time.
Oh.
And I was assigned the most important role ever for that person.
Whoa.
I was like the main character in their story. And the other people who were playing those different roles, even though they didn't know who the relationship,
Yeah.
the real relationship, that person who's asking for this, they didn't know the relationship, but they knew the emotions. How? I'm sure there's a lot discussed about that.
Mm.
And yeah, and then you go through this basically a real-time therapy session,
Yeah.
essentially.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's
So
incredible.
I imagine
And
the
that's
same thing with
it
there,
is.
except the horses are playing. That is so
Exactly. So this is something like this is my favorite one because of course you need people that are open, willing to see that. Some people maybe aren't there. Like they
Yeah,
they
of
need a
course.
different kind of experience. Maybe they just need to release some emotion. And there's other ways of doing that too with
Wow.
horses. I really, when I say listen to the horses, I really try to let them lead
Yeah.
and I follow their lead in this instance.
So
Yeah.
tell me, how does it deepen your spirituality? And then also, I would love to know more about your trip to Jordan, to Sweden, etc.
Mhm.
What have you learned from others as well in terms
Mhm.
of how horses relate to deepening our spirituality?
Yes, my teacher in Sweden, who I mentioned before, and so she's gone to Jordan, it's not me.
Oh, okay.
But so she has been a really, and is a one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met.
Yeah, she sounds like a
Um,
conduit.
she's a mystic,
Yeah.
really, I would say more than anything. She communicates with animals, but she communicates with everything. So what she does, she calls non-hierarchical, empathic, interspecies being.
Oh, well,
And a lot of the what she has learned, she's learned from horses. In particular, she has an amazing story. It would be worth for people to listen to the podcast that some of the podcasts she's been on, because her story is out of a Carlos Castaneda book. It's unbelievable. Like dreaming of a rock, taking a flight to Jordan, not knowing anybody, ending up with the Princess of Jordan. Just
yeah.
incredible story. But she has worked with these horses in Jordan who are the lineage holders of the 7 original horses that go back to the Prophet Muhammad,
Wow.
who came out of the clouds. And each of these lines, there are 7 lines, embody a certain quality. And as a whole, the 7 is a whole cycle
Of
of
course.
life to death.
Of course, the alchemical
Exactly.
process is 7 stages.
Exactly. That carries these qualities that are like, I think of them as like keys to unlock an understanding of how to live fully
Okay.
in this life.
Okay.
And so so each line has a different piece. One of my favorite principles that comes out of this is the way that they talk about, and this is all Emily saying what these horses have shared with her. They talk about the creator and how at the moment of creation, of the creation of you, of the creation of me, of the creation of the bird or the rock or
Yeah.
the blade of grass, there's this moment they describe where God is so excited, like a kid on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
and
Funny you
to
mentioned
meet the creation. And as we talked about earlier, I'm really interested in this idea of, as the creations, that we said, yes, I will
yes.
be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's this beautiful moment that they talk about where the creator is so excited to meet the creation and is, I think, happy that the creation has agreed to be. So that's sort of like the first step.
That's the first
That's the
experience of
first.
that's a really
I
yeah,
thought that's either the
go into
first or
it.
the second. Now I have to say these are really profoundly
I think it's probably the second, I'm
advanced. It
thinking.
could be the second. Now it's funny. I'm getting confused because I know the third is friendship. The first or the second, one of
Okay.
the other one is this energy of she's had a hard time coming up with the right word for it, but it's something akin to aggression, but it's not aggression like anger. It's like the instinct to live, to
Mm,
be alive, to fight for life,
yeah.
to not just give up your life. And there's friendship, anyway, you go through the cycle until
Yeah.
you go to the letting go of everything, and then you come into trust. And then, of course, it starts all over again.
Of course. Yeah.
So this is a very mystical set of teachings that comes from these particular horses. And when she works with the physical horses, but also the ancestor horses,
Wow.
also the ancestors of the places.
So essentially what it is that it's a experience of leveraging the mystical elements of horses in order to understand our divinity and how we can transform through our own lives. I mean, it's really
Totally.
that just as someone would do it through other different methods,
Totally.
this is another way of doing it that's
Exactly.
very much, I would say, rooted in the earth. And so you have these pure beings,
Yep.
which are horses, that allow us to
Completely.
get there to some degree, there being at a place potentially of more peace.
Totally. And
Wow.
that's why it's beautiful you said that, because I decided to call my offering Peace Horse Collective.
Mm,
And the reason I chose peace is because if I had sort of one goal for myself,
yeah,
it's to have inner peace
of
and to
course.
sow peace.
Yeah.
And I also felt that because my horse she comes from a lineage of war horses,
Mm,
I wanted to transmute that lineage into a
peace.
peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then collective, because I really believe that And this is also a huge teaching of the horses. eh, we can't do this alone.
Yeah.
We
It
are
is a herd,
it's a
it's a
herd, it's a
group, a collective.
collective. We
Yeah,
need each other,
yeah,
and that is the most natural thing.
yeah. So how has your own spirituality developed? How has your relationship or your understanding of divinity of God come to be throughout this process? Since, let's say, when you first started with the horses. When
It has been such a rapid, I would say it's the fastest expansion of my consciousness in a way,
wow,
because I think because I've been I think there is something to being deeply uncomfortable, right? To
really?
facing fear, at least for me,
Yeah.
that showing up in that state of fear and discomfort and meeting it over and over, because my longing to I knew there's something on the other side of it. I didn't know what it was, but I 100% was gonna find out, and that kept me coming back over and over again. I'm I had a career where I was considered an expert, and suddenly I'm a beginner again. That's hard, especially as we
Yeah.
get older, and there was so much I had to learn, and I had a lot of yeah, a lot of fear, a lot of awkwardness, and I think that just that determination, because I was longing so deeply to see what was on the other side of it,
Other side of it meaning,
of fear, of
I see.
discomfort, of I knew there was something there for me that has really changed me. And I would say largely a lot of the limitations or limiting beliefs that I might have had about myself have just washed away. And I feel when I especially when I'm with horses, although now I can do it anytime, there's this meeting point of being here in this moment, in the world, in a body, where the horses describe that they're always wondering why humans are trying to go over there or out there, get to another dimension, because they're like, it's literally through this moment
Yeah.
that's where it's at. So for me, there's been this beautiful, finally coming back to it's right here. It's not over there. It's not
And it meaning,
meaning God, meaning presence, meaning
yeah.
being, meaning wholeness. It's through this moment. And what I've experienced time and time again with horses, sometimes the moment is not a pretty moment, right? Sometimes the horses are up in arms about something. Sometimes the weather's terrible. Sometimes got a lot of anxiety or whatever. But I'm always reminded the horses always teach be with what is. Don't try to reject that anxiety or change it. Go into it and let that be the opening point or the meeting point where divinity lies, just in that meeting point.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge thing because so much of my previous spiritual life has been probably more geared towards over there, transcend,
I see.
get to another state. And this is really go into it feels much more like you said, earth, grounded in earth or
Yeah.
grounded in what is. It's this here that is the miracle. It's not anywhere
Do
else.
you have an experience or something that you could share? Or I'm just trying to, because when I hear that, it's like,
Mm.
yeah, that sounds great. Lovely. But what is that actually like? And so as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, what does that mean that I go through myself? I have that answer. I don't know if others do. And I know it's a deeply personal answer, but it's an important question
Mm.
because a lot of times, as you mentioned, we're thinking that you got to, as you said, change your state or God is above us, which God is, but then he's also within. That's the miracle or the magic and of God. And it's what instills and inspires awe of him, which is really beautiful. And
Yeah.
and marveling of him. It's like how
Yeah.
it's beyond our minds. So do you have an experience that, or can you give more specifics of what does it mean to go through? Is it realizations in that moment? Maybe is it unveiling? I don't like the word unveilings, but is it
Yeah. Like
opening up an aperture, maybe
mm.
understanding to allow us to bring in more light or to see or experience more light in our hearts?
I think for me, it's really about not. separating or not rejecting any part of ourselves or our experience. So I think so many of us on a regular basis we have all sorts of judgments about ourselves. We have all sorts of things that don't go our way. And I think it can be easy to think that if we just get rid of those things,
Yeah.
then
We're
if we just then we're good. Then we can finally. But what my experience has been is time and time again I come to the horses and it seems that the way into wholeness and feeling truly present, which is like a weird presence is like people throw that around. It usually makes me roll my eyes. But when I say it, I really mean it's a hard thing to really put into words because it's like there's a fullness. In my experience, there's a fullness to presence. And there's a lack of wanting anything other than that
Yeah.
moment. And instead of saying, gosh, okay, I better do some deep breathing and did I meditate this morning and am I wearing the right clothing for the weather and all the things that here I am in this moment and maybe I feel like crap. Maybe I'm super anxious. And that's the way into if I just let that be, if I don't reject it, if I don't try to change it, but I just am with it. In my experience, and this is something I practice in the presence of horses, it changes.
Mm.
And then suddenly there's an expansion.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
And in that expansion, I'm not an animal communicator, but I get communication from animals. And I don't really differentiate now because I feel like the communication that I get from animals, from spirit, from whatever,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter to me exactly who it's from. Could be my higher self, who knows? But I find that it's a very helpful message as humans to know that we don't have to change or reject parts of ourselves or be different than we are in that moment to experience divinity. It's actually in exactly as it is.
That's powerful. It's also a lifelong lesson.
And some days I can't do it.
Wow.
Some days it's really challenging. But I guess the thing about the horses is because they really demand presence and authenticity. So if I go in there and I just want to rush through it because I don't really want to feel how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
they're not usually going to go along with me. And that's when I say the ego annihilation. Like every time I think I feel like they're master teachers in this way because
Yeah.
they don't settle for less than your full capacity.
Yeah.
And even when you don't feel you have the capacity, they're like,
You
no,
have to,
you do.
yeah,
You
you
do.
have to
Yeah. You have
bring
to
it.
try. You have
Yeah.
to, yeah. So they really do draw out
Yes.
that kind of presence and
That's so
authenticity.
true. That's my experience too, because I rode for a number of years, and that's exactly what I experienced.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to lead the horse as you're riding it, because
Yeah.
someone has to be the leader, and they want to feel safe, they want to feel well led, and so you have to really step up. And maybe sometimes like, I'm not feeling it, or whatever. I have things on my mind, but you're forced because you're dealing with such a large and powerful animal. You do so much to step up in that way.
Yeah. And I would even say it's interesting because you can't fake it, right? When I was in Sweden over the summer, we had to move one of Emily's herds. I think there was about like maybe 8 or 10 horses, and we had to move them to a different pasture that was like 2.5 hour walk up and over a mountain.
Oh my lord.
And most of the horses, so her only rule with these horses is that you can't make them do anything.
Oh, nice. This used to be a
That's
horse on her farm.
Yeah, yeah, like, you can't make them move or do something, you have
Yeah.
to get out of the way kind of a thing. So, I happened to be getting sick that day, and I was thinking, "Gosh, I don't think I can go for this. I don't think I can do the walk for 2.5 hours." I was really not feeling well. And she said, "You do have the option, there are a couple horses that like to be ridden when they do the walk. They're
Yeah.
actually quite happy to be ridden." And I said, "Okay." So, yeah. So she brings me to this horse, and this horse I can't remember her breed. She's maybe a Swedish warm blood or maybe she was a thoroughbred, but she's a big horse. And it turns out her role is the attacker
Oh,
of the
great.
herd. So she's the front line of the herd. She will give her life in an instant to protect the herd. Quite an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I get up on this horse, she just with a blanket, no saddle. And she has this, so she also, the horses get to choose whether they use reins, whether some
Yeah.
horses like that, some horses
Yeah.
don't. She said, okay, she's going to have reins, but Emily giggles in this very charming way. And she says, but I don't think you're going to want to use them. Just let them be loose. Okay. So we start off, and this horse decides to be the front of the line for most of the walk. And at a certain point, we're off road. We're going up this mountain and it's rocky and there's all sorts of, it's bogs and it's very rough terrain. And I realize I can't steer. I couldn't steer if I wanted to. And I don't even know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I completely give
Surrender.
over to the horse.
That's
And we start going up this mountain and we're jumping up little rocky areas and we're going through brush. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life because I understood this horse knows so much more about how to do this than I do. And she's very powerful. She's much more of a leader than I am in this instance, right?
clearly, yeah.
And I got
Sorry,
to,
but
no, 100%. And I got to give over to her totally. And it was magic. I was just, like when I was a kid, I was just holding on. We would
yeah.
jump, I would just hold on. There was no technique. There was
Yeah.
no skill I could
Yeah, the
employ.
3 point and the whatever.
There's nothing. Yeah, keep your hands. Don't bend your wrist. There was nothing. I was holding on to her mane, and it was amazing. And I felt afterwards this embodied sense of what it is to be a leader in that way. She's not better than the other horses. She's not more important. She just has that role. And yeah, anyway, that was amazing.
The idea of surrendering
Powerful. Surrendering to the beast. That's a controversial.
the beast.
Yeah, that's a controversial thing. People,
Yeah.
that we have this whole fear of what if the animals took over. I actually think we probably would be a bit better off.
Maybe. And then I'm curious what got you into just spirituality in general? Because this is very interesting. Not everyone says, "Oh, I would love to leverage horses in order to get to know God and myself."
Yeah. So we don't have enough time for the whole story, but so I was
Yeah,
actually
that's true.
born
We got
into
a
a
few
spiritual
minutes.
community. I grew up in an ashram. So a community that was rooted in the original saint was from
Philosophies.
India. And so I grew up
Oh,
meditating,
you were into that.
chanting,
Yeah.
praying. And I was in that community in and out until I was 32.
Oh, wow.
And it ended up turning, as many of these things do that are these communities that are hierarchical and there's a head person, they get twisted, right?
Yeah.
So that happened. And it was interesting because at that point, when I realized this was not what I thought it would be or hoped it would be, that's a pretty common and like a spiritual journey. Like you
Yeah.
have the moment where everything falls apart, right?
Yeah. And now you're seeking.
And that was like everything was ripped away. My life, my community, my job, everything fell away. And I had to, I should say, I got to experience that everything that I thought was divine, there was so much more than that.
Mm.
But it was by having everything ripped away and all of my beliefs challenged that I had to start as a baby. And just like a child sees a flower and doesn't think, there is the flower, I am the person watching it. They're just
Yeah.
one with the flower, right? Like I got to go back to that with a lot of therapy and I saw a lot of healers because it was
Yeah.
a very intense, there was a lot of negative
Yeah.
things that happened. But my life has always been rooted in spiritual. And I think I have dear friends and family that are a part of that. And then a lot of the people don't know that
Yeah.
because it wasn't the common
Path.
the common
Yeah.
path. Yeah.
It's just a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for your time.
Sohail. Thank you. I
It
love
is
being with you always.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can go on for
Yeah, we will.
Well, we have to block out.
Yes, for sure.
And I'm so excited about all that you're doing, especially now with bringing into the United States, essentially these really ancient techniques of knowing oneself through horses. The constellations one is really
Yeah,
cool.
it's really
I
fun.
haven't heard anything like that before. Maybe I'm just out of
You'll
it.
come do it. You'll try it out.
We'll
See.
try it out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be the main character
Yeah,
again. And
you
say,
never
last time I
know.
was picked as the main character randomly in the group of 10 strangers. So that was my first experience. But anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And looking forward to more
Yeah, me
conversations.
too. Me too.